Oh yeah, I should put it right in front of me.
Put it on his chair. Put it on his chair. What happened?
Seriously, like you should have made it.
Oh, you're fine. I can't support either.
Okay, now guys, refocus here. So we just thought about the fact of this unequal heating of the Earth, and we're going to see that in this diagram here. So what does the red mean?
Hot.
Okay, it's warm. And the blues? Cold. Okay, and what you're going to see now, this is going to go over the course of a year. So again, notice our locations, 23.5 degrees north, 23.5 degrees south. So as we play this, so what's happening?
We're getting cold.
Okay, and then all of a sudden the northern hemisphere is getting warm. So it's this up and down shift. Now what you're not really seeing in this are ocean currents. And it's really those ocean currents that start to drive the climate. Because basically the whole role of the oceans, so actually if you really want to understand how weather works, you start with the oceans and the interaction between the heat coming in from the sun and then the heat storage within the oceans. It's really here that our weather begins. It's all about how these ocean currents distribute that heat energy. And that's how we get our climate, that's how we get our weather, that's how we get specific phenomena. It's all based on these ocean currents. And it all begins there. So for example, if we look at this again, we say, well, man, it's really warm here, but it's really cold up here in the north. So what happens is there's this main current that comes up here along the east coast of the United States. Do we know what that current is? Because you should. What's that current called?
Yes.
You guys seriously don't know? Come on, guys. You gotta be kidding me. Yeah, you guys are gonna feel silly. It's called the Gulf Stream.
Okay.
Okay, so the Gulf Stream basically comes right up here. It comes out of the Caribbean. Comes right up here along the United States East Coast. You see how it kind of just follows the coast. And then you see how right here Virginia kind of juts out? It deflects the current, and the current comes across the Atlantic and up into Europe. Now again, I think we talked about this before, but I think it's really important for you to notice this. When we think about the breadbasket of Europe, it's really this location right here. That's where a lot of the grains are grown in Europe. And yet, if you look at that, look at the latitude, they're the same latitude as Seattle. In Montana, in Minnesota, southern parts of Canada are all aligned with Europe. Yet Europe has a very comparable climate to our Midwest region here. And it's all because of that jet stream bringing that warm, moist air and warm, moist water out of the Gulf of Mexico and across the Atlantic Ocean.
So it could be like, Virginia and get that. So it's
Well, here's what the problem is. With Greenland melting its ice sheets, that fresh water disturbs the salinity, and it's called a heliocycle. And it disrupts the salinity, and it actually will shut down currents. And so what will happen is the Gulf Stream won't go all the way here. It actually will get cut off, and this entire northern part of Europe will start having a climate very similar to northern Canada. That will definitely create problems. And that's when we look at climate change. That's one of the things when we look at it, it's like, okay, this really is not good for human civilization, but it's something we have to contend with.
Is it bad for us or bad for Europe?
Well, it's bad for us on different sides. Us here, not really a big deal.
Yeah.
Except you're going to get stronger cold water coming down through here, and so all of this climate here will actually start to shift downward. Okay. Now, the same thing is going to happen over here in the Pacific. When we think about the warm, basically you guys heard of Pineapple. I know most of you guys have heard of Pineapple Express.
Yeah.
Okay, not the movie. Okay.
I was talking about the movie.
I figured you guys were. Now, you see a little Hawaii right here in the ocean. There is a very strong easterly current in the Pacific that basically cycles, goes like this. It cycles all the way around the Pacific. And that's why they call it the Pineapple Express, because it's a very strong current that comes directly from Hawaii directly into the west coast of the United States. If this becomes more freshwater and cooler water, that entire thing starts to shift down. How is that going to affect the climate of places like Seattle, who, despite being that far north, they actually get very little snow, they're mostly rain. Okay, it's because of this warm current coming in off the Pacific. Take places like California, and why everyone wants to live in California, because the weather is pretty much the same every day. 60 to 80 degrees every day. Never changes.
That's awesome.
Okay? Which is why I keep hoping that either we sell it off or they disappear to the other.
Wow,
Alright,
That's nice.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So the south tip of South America is more, what's the word? I don't even know the word, like Arctic than, I don't know, which, is it like really that Arctic?
yeah, well, yes and no. It would be similar to southern, I'd say southern Alaska.
So it's kind of like just mild.
Yeah, it's still going to be very cold. In fact, this region down there at the bottom of South America, it's not, basically what you have a really nasty set of systems going on. And I can't really hide this, but if we could grab the globe real quick, and I'll show you from there. On the globe, that southern tip, we get into big problems. So what we have is this very narrow slice right here. And that's from basically this, what is that? That's the Palmer Land, some kind of peninsula there. And you're talking about less than maybe 500 miles. So not a very wide gap there. But what you have is you have this very strong easterly current, and you have the Arctic Ocean mixing with the Pacific Ocean, mixing with the Atlantic Ocean, and they're all doing it right here in this tiny little gap. So you have a lot of strong, very strong currents, very cold currents, and in between here, I know we're not seeing it on this, but you can see if you look at a topographical map of the ocean floor, there is a slight rise that fills the gap. And it's the old seam where these two continents have split apart. So when the currents hit those mountains, it creates turbulence. This is actually one of the most dangerous places in the world to try to pass. It's very, very difficult water to maneuver through. You have sudden storms that pop up out of the middle of nowhere. They create 60-foot squalls. And this is not something to laugh at. You know, when there are boats that do disappear traveling through because they simply get capsized and shipwreck and you're done. Now, that's one of the main reasons, the main reason is timing, but it's the main reason why they created the Panama Canal. Because now, think about all that time it would take to traverse all the way down South America through that dangerous pass and come all the way back up. Then all we gotta do is cut a little canal through Panama and we can stay safe and continue across the world. So it's timing and safety that contributed to that. So yeah, it's not, so the climate is somewhat mild. I'd say it's almost like Maine. That's where I would put it. I mean, I've seen some pictures, but my guess would be very similar to northern Maine. Maine's pretty cool. All right, so basically, guys, like I said, the whole point of this, the whole point of the ocean currents, is that's what drives our climate. When we look at hurricanes, the hurricanes, they actually start over here on the west coast of Africa, and they journey across the ocean, and that's where all of our hurricanes come from. Now, I know for a lot of you guys, you're like, okay, so what? So they start over there. Why do they start there? One of the main ingredients that adds the fuel to those low pressure systems that gather into storms, what dominant feature sits here? Which desert? Look at the Sahara Desert. As those winds push all that sand out into the ocean, it actually fuels those storms. And so when this changes back, remember we saw that episode where it changed? We see the one here that talk about Sahara? Did we do that one? A little bit the next one, watch that. Watch what? Okay, we're not gonna watch right now. Alright, well, but there's other stuff I want to show you guys today. So today I told you we're gonna talk about what?